This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, and today I'm going to talk about patterns, paradigms, and perception. Our senses, or I mean the senses of living beings, is to detect patterns and to respond and adapt accordingly to preserve life. The acquisition of knowledge and experience, and the way to acquire knowledge is by mimicry, repetition. Animals, including humans, are able to identify patterns and behave, know what recognize sources of danger, sources of food, to establish relations that we need to identify. So we have the senses, and you have our nervous system, emotions, or the basic emotions and social emotions, that all these together decide, mostly subconsciously, what should we do. We have the involuntary nervous system that is taking care of many functions in our organism or in all living organisms that do not require the intervention of a conscious mind. So that's most of our life is run from our subconscious mind. So that is why is this important? This is important because the identification of patterns it's very important in the process of decision making, based on our identification of the past, the present, and also the projection for the future. Patterns are cognitive, affective tools. And why effective? They are effective because there is nothing that happens in a living organism that doesn't require an emotional state. Because our emotions are not the same as senses, but they give the quality. The emotions is a qualitative. It's a part of our of the living organism that helps in giving or attaching to a pattern a quality, good, bad, whatever it is. Well, the quality is not only given by reason, by supposedly the cognitive processes, because we are a living organism, a whole living organism, that all the processes are they do not need to be noticed in order to being operating in the behind the scenes. Okay, so I learned, not exactly like this, but I got inspired by Mr. Antonio Damasio, a neuroscientist from the University of the College of Arts. He runs the College of Arts and Sciences and Science, or it of the South, the University of South California. So, and I just thought it makes a lot of sense. It really makes a lot of sense. And my interpretation of all this, that the patterns, let me try to explain something else. When I use the word cognitive affective tools, okay, what I'm doing is already framing and creating a new pattern, which does not necessarily correspond to the reality of the processes that goes on inside my organism or my brain, or in my brain and in the whole organism. So that is already, that's why it is it is difficult to try to understand and to explain it in a ways, because language already is an interpretation mechanism. It's not exactly how the things really work, but it's an explanation, is an attempt to make it to make it understandable in communication, so that we can communicate it, share it with each other. The apprehension of patterns is with us since we are very young. I think since we start to censor the world around us, that we and of course that's very important, because the patterns we learn, they are going to shape our behavior, and they are going to shape our understanding of the world, because the patterns, we have patterns that are physical experiences, like touching a hot object and being burned, for example. That is an identification that if you touch something like that, will be burned, so you learn it. But also abstract and values and about reward and punishment, which has nothing to do, doesn't need, it can be connected with the physical world, but it is always through a value and value system or a belief system that is already, that are another reality of patterns, that also gives meaning and purpose to the other experience in the physical world, or tries to or is it's to shape to shape our perception. I'm not going to say manipulate, but is to make us perceive the reality and the relations in certain ways. So this whole process is part of our life since a very young age, and it will be part of us, because whatever we experience, there is always a memory in our body, wherever that is. There is a memory that is part of our personal experience, our individual experience, and it's going to be part of the record of our lives. So there is always influences that we do not know where they come from, but there is a reason, okay? There is a reason. There is always a reason. So, is it important our congenital, our genetic and biological traits? Of course they are. Of course they are, but the genetical traits of a species or a particular individual, they would not mean, and especially in the human species, where culture plays a role that is underwrites or overwrites I mean overrides, not underrides, overrides the natural inheritance. I think the people that try to explain everything through biology or genetics they are completely wrong. That is not because it's kind of they are trying to use science or pseudoscience in this case to explain the behavior and the decision or the decision process, the decision making processes through a living organism that is basically shaped by culture. That the behavior is shaped by culture. And this is not only absurd. This is because again, what these people are doing, they are intentionally or subconsciously, they are trying to explain it or to justify a system that is a dysfunctional system, that where we live, this kind of civilization and this kind of societies where we live, they are profoundly dysfunctional, but they want them to look acceptable, and the problem is with us. It happens with the same with psychiatry, with the stories of chemical imbalances. Can we suffer from those chemical imbalances? Of course, there is always that's not a completely lie, but that's a misunderstanding, an intentional, in order to make a society consume certain substances that again they might be useful for certain cases. I'm not going to deny it. So the point is the patterns and paradigms that we do not that run our lives. That's how we perceive everything, and so that's why perception is involved in all these. We need to understand it in order to understand why do we perceive the reality in a certain way. Why don't we even our inability to question, because that's another interesting point, because we most of the time do not even, it doesn't come to our minds to ask certain questions. Why? Because the patterns, how we see the past, the present, and how we project the future, those questions do not come into my mind, into our minds. Why? They don't come into our minds because we do not think about our reality critically. I mean, we do think, we do criticize, but we do not do the kind of analysis that is required to understand the roots of the problems. And it's like always in everything, if we just keep you just keep things in the surface, the understanding will be always shallow, fractured. It's going to be we are not going to understand the relations, we are not going to connect the dots, and not having to have a full picture. And therefore, it's very difficult that it pops up in our minds from the subconscious mind the questions that are essential to make us reasoning about essential problems that we seem unable to solve. We cannot solve a problem if we do not diagnose only by chance. Okay, we can solve it by chance, but in order to solve a problem, we need to have a proper diagnosis. You know, we need to understand what are the causes of the problem, what can we do, what can we change. And so it's not something that it just happens by chance. So that's why science has been important. Unfortunately, we have a lot of knowledge that is supposedly scientific, and it's not. It's pseudoscience in many fields. But the fact is that it is always required serious analysis, serious research, theoretically and practical, in order to understand the laws, the principles behind, that are the causes that underlie the symptoms that are causing the symptoms that we feel. So we need to understand this. I mean, this might seem kind of why should I be interested? Yeah, because it has to do with our practical lives. It has to do how our societies are organized, what kind of political systems do we have, why do we are not able to create organizations and an international order that is much but because we have the means to do it. We have the technological means, we have the human resources, okay, which is a beautiful word concept. Human resources. We do have the knowledge, but we also have an economic system, and you have a value system, a belief system that is responsible for the patterns that have been colonizing us since our young age, that lead us to understand the world in ways that then we are not able to see, to believe in alternatives. That's why when somebody, I mean, I don't remember it, I have to check it, that for many it's easier to see or to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. This is just to say how the patterns that control our perception and that are the base of the paradigm that how we understand and frame reality, and shape our perceptions and behaviors. And the way we solve problems, the way our minds solve problems, how they are approached and solved, doesn't even allow most of us to imagine a world without capitalism. This should tell us that probably what's wrong is that we are not asking the right questions. And we do not ask the right questions because they are not necessary to adapt to the current system, to the existing system. Those questions are necessary to question the system. They are necessary to challenge the reality that is the environment where we are surviving. That's why it's difficult to challenge, to have an incentive. We need to understand that we can do better, we can have better lives. This is not just imaginary, but we need to think about a new paradigm, to imagine and design a new paradigm, and we need to believe that it is humanly possible. It's not an utopian, because actually we are living in a new utopia, which is a growth economy. The growth economy is this credit-based economy, which is debt-based economy, with interest, with all these financial games. And basically the world, especially the Western world, has been controlled by banksters. Okay, these people are not the banking, the private banking empires or imperialism, because the Western imperialism needs to be connected with the banking imperialism, in the financial imperialism, behind the European empire, which means that we cannot understand our reality if we do not understand this financial and banking system that has shaped the world, that was the base of to build an imperialist civilization, as the Western imperialist civilization specifically. The American empire was built of the ashes. Okay, this is again framing, and it's already. I don't. That's not how I want to frame it, but that's how I'm able to do it now. That's why I always try to explain that whatever we try to explain, to dissect, to give that when it is always a framing. That's why we need other people to correct us, to complement, to find our flaws, and that's why we all need. This is not BS. This is the truth. Every day I watch several podcasts, very diversified. I don't watch. I mean, there are a few that I follow more with more frequency, but I just find to see the people that I really try to give an honest perspective. That's what I look for. That's what I try to that's what I really try to follow. Intellectual honesty. But intellectual honesty doesn't mean that our reasoning process is not captured by the framing, because we cannot avoid it, as we need to use the language, and language and narrative is a framing process. So, and by doing that, we are already distorting. Okay, be careful with the word. I'm not trying to say that, but we just, it's not exactly. So therefore, that's why that's one of the reasons why I always say that there are no saviors, there are no heroes, there are no authorities. There are people with better knowledge because they have been there, or they are smarter, or because they have been studying it more profoundly, or any other reason. Because some people are experts, and then what does experts do? They just they study and study and study only one field, or one little part of a field. So it's natural that they know a lot about it. Anyway, the point is that we need to understand these processes about the human condition, and in order that we can challenge the dominant narratives, but because they exist in us as living things, because they are here inside us. That's where they live. We don't need to do any. We don't have to have to have an intentional to learn it. They are everywhere. That's why the dominant narratives, they do not need. Just imagine one example about religion. If you have a Catholic country, or a Muslim country, or an Hindu, or whatever it is, it's normal that while you grow up, you become a Muslim, or a Catholic, or a Hindu, because the dominant narratives are telling you that the stories they make you understand the world. They give you the pattern. No, they give you the paradigms, the tools that how you should learn the patterns. That's how you should give interpretation to the patterns you see in the world. You look to something, and then you have to understand it through the cognitive tools, cognitive affective tools that were given to you. You don't need. You just learn it automatically because you are in touch with them. That this process of automatic learning process is inherent to our condition. We do not need to do anything like learning a language. How do we learn Portuguese or English, or our native language? How does it happen? it just happens that we grow up in that medium, that environment, and then we just learn it. And then it becomes part of us. How do you get rid of it? Yeah, just you tell me. How do you get rid of your native language? Or even your native culture? Or many other things? That's how our lives are, our conceptions, understandings, perception of the world and ourselves, and how it shape our relations, interpersonal relations and the relations with the world, just as part of an automatic process that doesn't require any intentional reasoning, that doesn't require that we, of course, that is reinforced by education. That's what the education is about. It's an indoctrination process. It's a training. It's an instrument to instrumentalize us. But that then we serve a system. And that's nothing wrong that you have to be part of a system. The problem is that we serve serving a system that is not for the collective good, but is a system that is a class-based system where certain classes are supposed to serve others based on the meritocratic principle and many other principles that are just prejudices, because there is another layer. We cannot get rid of prejudices. What is the prejudice? It's a prejudgment. Okay, that's what exactly we always use prejudgments, which is we use existing patterns to interpret new realities. So if we get rid of, we don't get rid of them, but if some of prejudices that run our behavior and our reasoning processes, if they are dominant, we can, by training ourselves consciously, we can really bring other prejudices into light. I could say that positive prejudices, let's put this way, that they become dominant, and then they become part of our automatic system. They become they from the subconscious mind, they will become part of the automatic perception system that allows us to read the reality, to read the phenomena, to read to go through everything. When we are reading, when we are watching videos, when we are listening to speeches, or whatever we are, or listening to podcasts, or whatever we are doing, or with our friends, or in our family, and in our work environment, we become to understand different that realities in a different way, just because we changed the dominant narratives and prejudices and biases and everything else. That's what we can do consciously. That we can consciously train critical analysis and not that is always the problem of biases. That is always be the problem, that we are not able to have a perfect analysis, or because we cannot work in absolute terms. Human beings do not work in absolute terms. We are relational. We need context. We work from something. We do not work from just, even it doesn't matter if it's abstract thinking or whatever kind of, you just think about art. Art is about framing, okay? Also about framing. Is it free? Of course it's not free. Because imagination is conditionings. Our imagination, our creative imagination is very powerful. We can solve problems and we can create new realities, but not out of nothing. It is always relational. So this might seem as not having any practical or pragmatic use for whoever listens to this. But if you have a closer look, and if you try to find more information and think and do your research and homework and try to and slowly think, maybe you find out, you realize that okay, this might be more serious than it seems, and might have much more to do with my real life, with the life that I take for granted, with the reality, with the understanding of the reality that we take for granted. Our societal system, that it seems eternal and impossible to change, but actually it's not like that. It is changing all the time. It is changing now. It is the process that the historic process. It's a very dangerous one, exactly because the existing dominant paradigm, which is the imperialist civilization, the Western imperialist civilization, is being challenged seriously for the first time at least in 500 centuries, more than that, but at least in 500 centuries, that is being seriously challenged. First it started to be challenged by the socialist and communist movement, but it was not able. So now, but again, the challenge is the imperialist, the Western imperialist civilization, okay? But capitalism, that people do not associate with it, it needs to be challenged too. This paradigm needs to be challenged too. And that's part of the problem that many people seem to not understand. That the capitalist system needs also to be challenged as the international prevailing system, political economy. And there are many people on the left, Marxists included, that do not see the problem, seem not to address this problem correctly. That the Chinese are being educated with profound capitalist values. I do not mean that the Chinese, I'm not trying to bash China, but the Chinese system, whatever you call socialist, or with the or capitalism with, socialism with Chinese characteristics, or whatever people try to frame it. The reality it is that we have a prevailing system, global system, that needs to be challenged, and needs to be challenged and needs to be replaced, because it's going to, because first of all, it is truly utopian, and the reason why it works is because it leaves a trail of destruction, a trail of pillage, a trail of the humanization and overshoot and extinction, species extinction, and appropriation, private appropriation of all of resources and territories and everything, that it might seem that it is how things work, and it is how things work, but it might seem, it has been naturalized and normalized, I know, but it will, in the long run, it will create more misery and instability, and it's always about competing, especially the competition, the so-called great power competition, that's going to make us use the resources for the wrong purposes. And the resources are limited, but we should, and just the belief that we think that we can extract all resources and we can have the sacrificial zones, and because to save civilization, this is not to save civilization, this is to save a specific paradigm or civilization that we unfortunately understand as the civilization. That's why we live in this Tina mentality. There is no alternative. That just it is amazing, and I think we have the responsibility to defy it, to challenge it. We all not look for leaders, do not look for experts, do not look for saviors, do not look for authorities or gurus or, no. Look to discuss and debate it as part of a class of grassroots movements. That's what we need. We need to understand that we need to have systems, economic systems, political systems, social and cultural systems that we can all understand and participate. We do not need to be told that we are stupid, therefore we need masters because they know better than us. They have to run the things, so they have to have the secrets, the secrecy, and we are allowed to vote in the so-called democratic liberal democracies, capitalist liberal democracies, but they do not respect us. They do not care at all about our opinion, and because things are not run, they are not managed on our behalf. They are managed on the behalf of other people, of the fat cats. Okay? So um, we need to challenge these paradigms. We need to our responsibility is to learn by ourselves intentionally ways for a critical analysis that allows us, because this is a process, this is not things that we do in the weekend, okay? That is very important, that we transform certain things, certain in habits, regular habits, like having a walk, like eating vegetables or whatever, whatever you have to you think that you need to transform it into a habit, into a regular. And why? Because when you transform it into a habit, you do not need to have the will, because it's already a habit, it's part of your routine. And when it's part of your routine, you just do it because it's already part of your, it's kind of, it becomes part of you, part of your, part of our needs, kind of, let's put it this way. It's just the same, like having bad habits of smoking or drinking or whatever. Once we acquire the habit and it is transformed into a dependency, then it's a problem. But it's better to have good dependencies than bad ones, I guess. And that's what I'm trying to convey with this message. Okay, I'm done for today. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.